And due to the wet and cold conditions, the Egan Warning Center for Wheeler Pavilion activation, allowing hundreds of people to sleep in a warm place. They weren't the only site. The memorial building in Springfield also stayed open, and it faced its own trials and tribulations. Julio Mora Rodriguez spoke with volunteers who shared their experiences.
We've never done this before.
Liz Herx was one of the volunteers at the warming center.
And we didn't have a plan, and we were buying time to try to figure something out, to get a plan. We were taking it hour by hour.
On Tuesday at 11 in the morning, the staff at Egan's work was done. They did their job activating the center and taking care of guests. They were supposed to let their guests go that day, but volunteers at the memorial building took note of the still frigid conditions. They tell me no public facilities or transportation were available to look after their guests during the day. So they decided to stay open, and they occupied the memorial building throughout the day and into the regular activation schedule for Egan warming centers through the night and into the morning.
From 4:45 a.m. until 5:15 when I left, we had power, we had heat, we had food, everything was unusual and atypical, but we were making it happen.
Here in Springfield, they had over 145 people at this site alone. It was held together by a handful of volunteers.
That seemed like there was no plan to take care of folks when they got out of here.
Mallory Musselman came in the next day as part of the morning crew. Musselman says the volunteers that stayed on throughout the night were faced with quite the challenge. Hundreds of people were cramped in one space, many of them in need of medical assistance, and all bone-chillingly cold. At several points, the memorial building's power was lost. The volunteers were forced to use headlights to take care of their guests. When Musselman came in, it felt eerily similar to another disaster.
I also volunteered after the holiday farm fire, and this felt extremely similar to those circumstances.
Volunteers also tell me no help was given to them from the professional or nonprofit services of Springfield. In their eyes, they felt the city was very unprepared for this kind of disaster. Many of the guests were from the homeless population, but volunteers were quick to note not all of them were.
We also had guests who are not unhoused and were all of a sudden found themselves unhoused because of trees and losing power and whatnot.
According to volunteers, Egan does not plan to be open again for the time being. Their resources are spent, and the weather appears to be warming.